Movie Review Mom. Today I have a very special guest, the president, founder, and CEO of Desert Wind Enterprises, Chandler Rice. Woo! I thought Chandler would be perfect to be my guest as we both do a movie review of Aquaman. But first, Chandler, tell us a little bit about Desert Wind Enterprises and what you do, and then we'll tell everybody what we thought about the movie.
Okay, well, first off, thank you for having me on your show. And Desert Wind Enterprises, we basically are a comic book based company. We have multiple companies that are underneath us. We started with Desert Wind Comics, which specializes in getting autographs of comic creators and celebrities and stuff on comic memorabilia. We have customers worldwide that send us their stuff. We take them to shows, we get them signed, stuff like that. We have our retail store, which is Celestial Comics, which is located at the Village Square Shopping Center here in Las Vegas. And needless to say, that's where people can come and buy all kinds of comic book memorabilia, pick up their weekly comics, and just come and have fun and geek out. I also have a couple other companies, one which is a company that basically manages comic book creators for their appearances at shows. I deal with people such as John Romita Jr., Chris Claremont. I used to manage Stan Lee for many years for his appearances. And then we have my radio show called Geeked Out, which takes place on the DefTel network. And you can also find us on YouTube. Go to DefTel TV, and that's where you'll find us. We have a weekly show on Wednesday afternoons, and we just talk about comic books, fun stuff, which you yourself have been a guest, and I look forward to having you back again because we have a good time talking. And then let me see, last but not least, I have my convention that we put on here in Las Vegas called Great American Comic Con. Took place this past November. So with all that going on, that keeps me pretty busy.
You are a very busy guy, and you just got back from Brazil, where you said,
Yeah.
how many attendees were there at that comic convention?
This is the largest convention we had ever been to. I'm at San Diego every year. I'm at New York every year. We're at all the major conventions here in North America. This is the first time we've done one in South America. 260,000 plus attendees.
That's
I walked in and I'm just like, oh my God, this was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I have to give a shout out to Yvonne, who is the promoter of the show, and he and his staff were top notch. As far as I'm concerned, they've set the bar for what a comic book convention should be. It was phenomenal.
Wow. And in comparison, how many people go to the Comic-Con in San Diego? Because you go there every year and have been for years.
San Diego's between 150 to 170,000. Depends on who you talk to, where you get the numbers from. Same thing with New York. New York at one point was saying they thought they were going to get close to 200,000. But again, both of them, I'll be honest with you, the show in Brazil is what San Diego or New York should be. The quality of the booths that were at the Brazil show were unbelievable, just absolutely outstanding. And you could tell that the fans just had a great time. And we were there. We took John Romita Jr. to the show. We also had Joe Rubenstein and Scott Liddell. And the promoter was telling us that John Romita Jr. had the longest lines it ever had of any comic book creator in their artist alley. In their shows. So needless to say, they've asked us to come back with more guests, which will be returning to Brazil next year, as well as they've invited us to a new show that they're going to be putting on in Germany. So,
and you're taking me with you, right?
International traveling.
You're taking me with you, right?
Well, I'll say this. Definitely taking you in spirit. I can't necessarily guarantee because, I'll see what I can do.
I'll work at your booth.
I'll be honest with you. I think you would want to think twice about that after you've actually done one show with us and you realize how hard.
Yeah, I know. It's hard work. And you're on your feet and they're long days and long hours. I know.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Just, in short, when we're at a convention, our day starts about 7 o'clock in the morning and it ends about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's you
Well,
know.
we've got to talk some more about that.
Yeah,
But in the meanwhile,
that's a
let's do a
conversation for
movie.
another time.
Let's do a movie review about Aquaman. And
Absolutely.
as if audiences don't already know, Aquaman is rated PG-13. It's 143 minutes, and the studio was Warner Brothers. This is DC Comics, so there's no Stan Lee tribute, which I love that Marvel does that. But
Yeah.
and real quickly, are you a DC or a Marvel fan, or are you equally a fan of both?
I am a fan of comic books, whether you're talking DC or whether you're talking Marvel. I will tell you that growing up as a kid, ironically, Aquaman was actually one of the first comics that I picked up for DC, and
Oh.
that I gravitated towards the character Arthur um, in Aquaman before I started reading other DC characters. Obviously, you're talking about Superman, you have Batman. I mean, just there's all
The
the other
Justice League,
characters.
yeah.
But yeah, Aquaman was one of the first ones that I read when I picked up a DC comic book.
Wow. All right. So if you had to give it a grade, A, B, C, D, F, what would your grade be?
I would have to say a B.
Oh,
I
okay.
I liked what DC did with this, but then also there were some things that I wasn't quite sure where they were going with it. Um, and I'll get into some of the specifics as we go along. But I like I said, I'd give it a solid. I'd give it a solid B.
Okay.
It takes
Good.
a lot for me to say an A plus because I can't really say that I've seen a movie that I would give an A plus to. But at the same time, I know there are people out there that have been saying, "Oh, well, this movie's not all that great." Blah blah blah. You know, everyone has their own opinions, and I think also part of it is it comes from what individual backgrounds are and what people's expectations are.
That's
So
very true. And actually, I wanted to ask you about that because as a young boy who read the Aquaman comics, Aquaman was blonde. And now we've got Jason Momoa, who's very exotic looking and Pacific Islander looking. So, how did you feel about, first of all, the actor choice? And then tell me, just in general, all the things you thought they did well in the movie. And then we can say the things maybe we didn't
okay.
or
No,
so.
as far as Jason, I think Jason actually was an excellent choice for the character. Um, the whole blonde hair routine, that's not something I've ever really gotten into. And just like, give you an example, I don't think if they were suddenly to change Superman to blonde, I don't think I would care one way or the other. I wouldn't sit there and go, oh my God, oh, they've totally ruined it. You know what? The color of the hair is not going to do any difference to me. Jason, I have to give props to Jason. He really goes into his character. And when you consider some of the stuff he's done in the past, he did Conan the Barbarian. He was in the series Game of Thrones, where he was one of the major characters. And I know that Jason has completely immersed himself into the Aquaman lore of trying to do everything he can to make him be the best Aquaman he can. And I think actually the fact that he has the Samoan or what you call Pacific Island look actually adds to it. Granted, you know, Atlantis is supposed to be somewhere out in the Atlantic Ocean, but the fact is that I think because he has that more islander kind of look, I think it actually helped the story, in my opinion, helped the story more in the sense that you had a battle that was taking place between two half brothers. And not, you know, I realize we want to be careful about what all we say, but you basically had two half brothers that were battling each other in this movie, and you had two distinctive looks. You really did.
Right, his brother looked more like the classic comic book Aquaman. But I thought Jason, he added a real, well, I'd seen him recently in the movie Braven, and he's just this big, muscular guy who can certainly get into fights and fend for himself. But he added this kind of a sexy bad boy element to it, which I thought made it really fun. And I kind of get the impression that's probably how he is in real life, don't you think?
He is. He is. You know, I've seen him at many conventions. I've met him a couple of times, Sharon, my wife, has a picture with him, of course, so that we can put up the
Oh.
wall with all the celebrity pictures. But no, he's number one, he's an easygoing guy, but at the same time, he's not afraid to rough and tumble it up. I mean, I don't know if you saw the piece where he did a Polynesian dance. It was while they were doing the red carpet to the
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
yeah, it was all over. It was viral on the internet. They did the red carpet, the red carpet routine with Aquaman, the release and everything. And there was probably, I want to say, 10 guys who were with him, and they all started doing the Polynesian, like a Polynesian war dance.
Like the
And
New
it was
Zealand
interesting
haka?
because,
The
huh?
haka dance from New Zealand?
Yeah, something like that. I can't say exactly which one it is, but it's what I would refer to as one of the Polynesian dances that you would see it at like a Hawaiian luau when you have the male dancers come out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what made this fun is you even had his son and his daughter who even got into the dance itself. So
Oh.
they were among that group. But Jason, he just, like I said, he just completely has immersed himself in this character. And I think he has taken this character onto himself. He has taken ownership of this character, but I think he's also taken responsibility of this character as well. I know that he recently had a meeting with DC to talk about the direction of where they want to take the next Aquaman movie, and so that's part of him and who he is, wanting to make sure that this character stays in the direction of what he feel would be right. And I think it's interesting because you look at there's obviously the comic book lore that you could go to, the source material that you can go to. Then you have what I call the Hollywood people who they're going to deviate from the source material because they're going to go, well, we think this is what's going to make us more money, even though it has nothing to do with the source material. And then I think Jason, like I said, is immersed himself in the source material, has taken ownership of the character, and wants to try to keep the character somewhat on course with what he feels is going to be something the fans are going to enjoy, and that he knows is probably the right way to go to stay in tune with what the Aquaman character is.
Okay, so now you mentioned the direction and the right way to go. Do you think they went the right way in terms of the flavor of the movie?
This is what's been different between DC and Marvel. Marvel figured out 10 years ago they've got to go to origins.
They have to go to what?
They have to go to origins. Origins meaning they have to introduce
the origins, yeah.
Where they came from. You had the introduction of Captain America. You had the introduction of Iron Man. You had the introduction of Thor. All these movies Marvel did, and what did they do? They built up to what ended up being the Avengers. DC, on the other hand, didn't learn that lesson, and what they tried to do is they tried to take their two primary characters, Batman and Superman, and they tried to throw them into the Justice League. Now, yes, you had Wonder Woman, but they had already done the Justice League movie before they did the Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah, and everybody's like, wait, who are these people? Especially people like me who don't read comic books. I want a slow build up where I really love the characters, and then when they all come together, it's like this celebration reunion, and it's so fun. And you're right, DC didn't do that.
Yeah, so now what they're doing is I think they're kind of backtracking a little bit, and now what they're doing is they've done the introduction of Wonder Woman, which, I thought Wonder Woman was a phenomenal movie.
I did too. I loved it.
Patty Jenkins did a great job on that, and I'm looking forward to seeing the second one. You have Aquaman. I think this is a proper origins of Aquaman, showing where he came from, so that if DC does continue to go forward with the Justice League, at least now people will have an understanding of why Aquaman is the way he is, who this character is that is now fighting among this team of superheroes or metas or whatever you want to call them. So I think DC did they did it right in the sense that, okay, let's tell the beginning of Aquaman. They didn't try to do a middle of the story, which is what ended up happening with both Batman and Superman. Batman and Superman was, okay, this is the middle of the story type of thing, you know, where they show the characters, but you don't know where the characters came from. You saw a little bit of that with Batman when I don't remember which Batman movie it was, but you saw Batman from the beginning, you know, when he sees his parents getting killed in front of him, and you see where his connection to the bats were and everything. You saw that happening. I think it was the Christopher Nolan movies, if I remember correctly. So basically, you know, it was. I think again they've done the right thing.
I loved some of the creatures were really fun. Some of the creatures I thought were kind of ridiculous, like the brine guys. You know, I'm like, okay, whatever. But it was really fun. I liked how they floated in the water. I loved how their hair always flowed in the water. It really felt like they were under the water. And the universe building that they were able to create, I thought they did very well. See,
well, I thought it was very interesting in the sense that if you've ever tried to talk underwater, that dynamic of it, you know, forget the fact that you can't breathe underwater, but it was interesting how they even had the talking underwater. And I remember reading interviews about that, about the director and how he was trying to deal with that dynamic. And I also thought it was interesting where you saw like when you had the assassin guards that were chasing after Arthur and Mira when they were chasing them through that small city.
Oh, in Italy? When they were in Sicily, I loved that. Italy. Yeah. And I think those characters were ridiculous. They looked like Power Ranger villains or something. I didn't like them at all.
Well, what I thought was interesting is you saw like one guy, his helmet got broken. And
yeah, I like that part.
He ended up sticking his head in the toilet to get some water in him and the whole thing.
Yeah, that part was cute. It just their uniform costume things, they just looked ridiculous to me. But okay, so
remember though you're talking about a society that's supposed to be more advanced than the topsiders, as we would call them.
Wow, that's true. That's true. All right, so you didn't give it an A+, you gave it a B. So what were some of the things that you were not as pleased with?
Honestly, I didn't experience the yay scene. I didn't really have a scene that made me go, oh wow, you know, or jump up out of my seat or something like that. Also, I didn't have that scene that's like, oh my God, you know, kind of. If you look back to like the Avengers, when suddenly you had the snap of the fingers and suddenly you started seeing, and we're all sitting there going, holy crap, wow. You know, and I didn't see that. I didn't experience that. So that is the one thing that I think it lacked, was it didn't have that huge wow factor to it. It did in the sense of how it built the world, the undersea world. That going back to touching on that was great, but I just didn't have that moment where it made me want to jump out of my seat and start cheering and jumping up and down, or it didn't have that moment where I wanted to start crying. And that to me is what takes a movie to that next level. That to me is what takes that movie up to that A level.
Yeah,
is when you have that moment that's like, that's when you sit there and go, wow, I'm glad I came and saw this movie for that scene right there. So
right. I think one scene, you and I, before we started filming this, we were talking about Bumblebee and how that was a nice course correction in the Transformer franchise, because some of the battles, or all of the battle scenes, it's just all this motion and you can't even tell what's going on. And I felt that same way in the big battle scene at the end. There were all these creatures all over the place, and you were like, wait, what? I want to see, slow down, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Is that it almost, it was too much. It was like, you know, one creature after another, after another, after another, after another, and unfortunately to me, the whole thing with Arthur got lost in it. To me, the what it took them too long to get to that battle between Arthur and his half brother. I would have liked to have seen more engagement between them, because you had that storyline where the half brother hated Arthur because the half brother felt that Arthur was the reason why the mother had gone away, and obviously the mother, he thought the mother had been killed, and we find out at the end, which, you know, again, not going to spoil anything, but
You just did.
no, I didn't say what happened. I didn't say what happened. But I think they could have explored that more to help with a little bit more of the dynamic between the two brothers, or the two half brothers.
Yeah.
I actually felt there was more of a connection between the character that William Dafoe played and Arthur than there was between the ruler and Arthur, or who was the king at the time, who would have
Yeah.
been Arthur's stepfather, technically. I don't know, but anyway.
Yeah, I thought William Dafoe was an interesting choice. I've loved him for years, but I never pictured him necessarily in a superhero type of movie, and he seemed a little old maybe for this role.
Well, don't forget, William Dafoe was in the original Spider-Man movies with Tobey
Oh, yeah,
Maguire.
you're right. Yeah,
Yes,
that's true. Why did I even say that? That's true. You're right.
Yeah,
Well, he was younger back then too. I don't know.
Well,
Anyway. All right. Well, we've talked. I know we could talk for an hour about this movie. So it was good. Were you disappointed, or you just kind of left going, okay, let's try another one?
You know what? To me, it was a good popcorn movie. You know, I sat there. I felt engaged. I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't where I sat there. It's not like I couldn't wait to get out of my chair and leave. You know, I've seen some movies like that. It's like, let me out of here. I got better things to do. I actually wanted to sit back and I wanted to enjoy the credits and see what all was, see all what was I was going to see on the screen. And I was curious to see if DC was going to do anything for Stan, just out of curiosity.
Right.
So
well,
but
they didn't.
I enjoyed it. I would say, you know what, it's definitely worth the ticket, the price of admission to go see, especially if you're a comic book fan. You know, if you're a comic book fan, you're going to want to go see it just so that you can see what they did with some of the lore and everything. If you're not a comic book fan, you know what, it's still going to be a lot of fun to go to.
Okay, very good, fair enough. And unlike Marvel, that has often several after credit scenes, there is one, only one, and it's certainly not Stan Lee. And it was interesting to see when the movie ended, a bunch of people got up and started walking out, and I said to my husband, clearly these people have never been to a comic book movie before, because they always have
waiting for the Marvel moment, yeah.
Or they've never been to a Marvel
moment, yeah. So, yeah, again, and it's a matter of connecting the movies to what's going to happen in the future, and I think Marvel obviously has capitalized on that in a huge way. I have to say this real quick about DC and Marvel. Marvel, when it comes to movies, they've done as far as I'm concerned, they've pretty much done everything right. Their TV shows, they're okay, and I'm not even going to get into the discussion about the whole Marvel Netflix thing. That's a whole other topic of conversation.
The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that.
DC, they've had their problems with their movies, but DC, as far as I'm concerned, has done great with their TV shows. So they've kind of balanced each other out.
Interesting. Yeah, good. Okay, and then the last little question I wanted to ask you was, because this is Movie Review Mom, how family friendly would you say that this movie is?
Absolutely. I I can't really think of a moment where someone would sit there and like a mom would put her hand over her son's eyes or something like that. I can't think of any moment that stood out to me like that. There wasn't anything that, I don't think there was anything that was gratuitous as far as language. There wasn't anything gratuitous as far as body or violence, overly violent. I mean, you know, it's
Well,
I
it's
can't
certainly
really.
violent. I mean, there's a lot of fighting going on between various creatures and humans. But I think it is family friendly. My only concern is, I mentioned that Jason Momoa's personality as Aquaman is, you know, kind of bad boy and a rebel of sorts. And so I was disappointed that a few times he used kind of some rough language, not like extreme profanity, but he said things that I know kids are going to imitate. I'm trying to think if I can even, I think he said something like, screw you or something. And I'm like, oh, kids are going to be saying that. You know what I mean? So I was surprised that they put a few lines like that in the movie that I just kind of went, oh no.
Well, honestly, I couldn't even think of. I'll tell you the one scene that I thought kind of I had to kind of laugh about, and I didn't even catch this part, but it was the scene between the guys and Jason in the bar, and the guys come walking up to Jason, and you're like, oh God, okay, here we go. We have a big bar fight that's going to happen. And what they do, they wanted a picture. Now, here was the interesting thing that Sharon caught that I didn't. She goes, did you happen to notice that iPhone or whatever the phone was the guy had was in a pink case?
I didn't notice that.
I said, nope, didn't even catch that because I was ready for something else to happen.
Right.
But I also think it was a fun little thing they did with that because they went in one direction and you thought it was going to go to a fight.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, oh, we got a picture with you, dude. And it's like, okay, you know.
Yeah, I totally, and I thought that was cute. And I always appreciate when there's humor and when they make fun of themselves in the movie. That means, you know, they're not taking themselves so seriously, and Marvel does that great. They know how to poke fun at themselves and have fun with it, and I really like that.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So, like I said before, you and I could keep talking, but we need to end this video so people don't, you know, fall off. But thank you so much for joining me. And
you're welcome.
Tell everybody one more time where they can catch you on YouTube.
As far as on YouTube, you can find us at DeafTell TV. That is DeafTell TV, and what you'll do is look for Geeked Out. It is our podcast show that we do, and we do it every week. You can also go and you can download the DeafTell app, which is available on you know your.
Wasn't it on Sirius Radio? Was it Sirius Radio?
No. DeafTell has its own radio station, and you can listen to it by downloading the app, which you just get wherever you get your apps from, and the app is completely free, and you can actually listen to the radio show, our Geeked Out radio show on the DeafTell network.
Yeah, and I'll be joining you the beginning of January in your next show.
Yep, we're looking forward to it. We're going to be doing some more fun stuff, and hopefully we're going to have you coming back multiple times next year, because believe me, there's going to be lots of movies to talk about. Yes,
I'm excited. Well, thank you again for being here. All of Chandler's information will be down below in the description, so you can get onto his website and go visit the store if you live in Las Vegas. Catch him at one of the comic cons. He's at all of them. And so thank you again. And you will definitely come back to join us, right?
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Yeah, we've got lots more comic book movies coming. Maybe Avengers.
Oh, boy. It's the stuff I'm already hearing. It's going to be interesting.
I'm glad we only have to wait until April instead of like the summertime for the Avengers.
Well, we got plenty of time, plenty of things to catch up on. You have Captain Marvel coming out.
Yeah.
You have the Avengers coming out. You have the X-Men universe as getting back into it with Dark Phoenix, which is going to be a lot of fun. You know, DC, we have Wonder Woman coming out, and it's gonna be interesting to see where they go with some of their other characters.
Yeah, another great year of movie going. Well, thank you, Chandler, and thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful time at the movies. See you later.
Bye.